I remember seeing a short story competition a few years ago in a newspaper, and it asked people to submit a story in less than 50 words, but it had to be a complete story. And the winning entry, as far as I can remember, it was something like this. I looked at the postcard in the newsagent's window. It said, "Christening gown and cap for sale, never used." Wow, that's got a whole backstory to it. You can imagine a child longed for that never came, a miscarriage, a broken heart. And it could have been different. It could have said wedding dress or wedding rings, never used. It would have spoken of a broken romance or something hoped for, and those hopes then dashed. I mean, we're living in a time when the newsreaders are introducing us to new words like pandemic and unprecedented, quarantine, self-isolation. But a word that I keep hearing is disappointment. There are so many things that have been cancelled, so many things that have been put on hold. It struck my own family. My daughter's wedding in May has had to be cancelled. The wedding of the daughter of a friend to the son of a friend has also been cancelled. A couple celebrating their golden wedding, and they were going to travel from Vienna to Venice on the Orient Express. How wonderful that would have been. It can't happen. A man was telling me that his wife and mother-in-law were going to go on a longed-for trip to New York. No, it's not to be. And you could go on. Funerals. Oh, too often now I've stood with no more than 10 people at the crematorium. Sometimes it's been, for a friend such as John Booth, a leading light in the restoration of the Bethesda Chapel in Hanley. 10 people for a short committal, when we plan for there to be hundreds from all around the country to come and give a send-off to this lovely, lovely man. Perhaps we can have a memorial service, and perhaps other families will later. But somehow you sense disappointment. People will talk about missed opportunities in other ways. I read of a lady, she was writing on Facebook, she got tickets for the Centre Court this year at Wimbledon, and of course she won't be able to go. And I am the proud possessor of a ticket for Oldham versus Port Vale. It may happen, it may not. But it's this word disappointment, a strange word. It sounds like you've had an appointment, and to use modern slang, it got dissed. It didn't happen. And in some instances, such as that story at the start, it will never happen. Now you may look at me and say, well, you're a minister, you're a man of God or whatever else. What does God know about disappointment? Well, I think he knows a lot about disappointment. He sees it daily in humanity and how we treat each other. But his son, Jesus, and this is as we approach Holy Week, that was a week of utter disappointment. It started so well, you may think. Palm Sunday, we call it, when people cheered him as he rode a donkey into Jerusalem. It was the marvelous entrance, you may think. They threw palm leaves in front of the donkey. They laid their coats down. The crowds cheered. But just out of camera, the leaders, the religious leaders, were already planning to kill him. And as he came near the temple, he was moved to tears, and he said, if only you knew what would bring you peace. But he hints that the time has gone. And he wept over the city and said, how often I would have gathered you up as a mother hen gathers her chicks. And he was going to live that out, because later in the week, as well we know, he was going to be disappointed when at the Last Supper, Judas walked out to come back to the Garden of Gethsemane, kiss him as a sign of betrayal. Wow, how ironic that is. The friends he'd asked to look out for him had fallen asleep. And so then we have torture, and then we have crucifixion. And you could say, wow, that is the ultimate in disappointment. This Son of God who came to seek and save the lost, and then death came and finished it. And yet it didn't, because we know that isn't the end of the story. A famous old preacher, he had a phrase. He said, it's Friday, speaking of Good Friday, but Sunday's coming. And what it means if you live the other side of Good Friday is whatever the disappointment that comes, you can turn it round and bring hope from it. Here's some words from the Bible. The Apostle Paul is in prison. He's facing his own death. But he says, we can boast of our troubles. Well, there's not many people would say that because we know, and this is true if we let it, trouble produces endurance. Endurance brings God's approval, and his approval creates hope. And this hope doesn't disappoint us. Wow, how often we've hoped for things and they disappointed us in the end. But this hope doesn't. What is this hope? This hope is whatever the worst is that life can throw at us, God can take it a bit further, that he can bring good out of bad. Many of those people who I mentioned, and certainly for me, we will have a rerun. We will be able to enjoy those moments. It may not quite be the same, but we're really, truly going to enjoy it. But what about the person? What about those people who are selling the christening robe or the wedding ring or whatever? They're never going to get the chance to use them. Can you live with hope? I can look at a raft of people in my life, a lady who would have loved to have children. She's had a serial miscarriage, time after time miscarried. And yet she applied herself to being a classroom assistant, to running Sunday schools, to loving children. And if she was never a mother, I tell you, she was a grandmother to so many, many children. That hope that doesn't disappoint, that hope, if you like, that gave her a second chance. And for me, a verse that's been key in my life is the one I've mentioned many times. People have heard me say, all things work to good for those who love the Lord, who are called according to his purposes. When I had the disappointment, the utter devastating disappointment of finding my son dead in his cot, in that moment, I asked God to honour that word, to give me a hope that wouldn't disappoint, that at some point in my life, I'd be able to look back and say, because of my son's passing, good came out of it. And I look back and I see so many things. But one is, for someone who's taken now hundreds of funerals, who was absolutely scared of death, scared to speak to people who are bereaved, it gave me a heart, it gave me compassion, it gave me love for those who were bereaved. And so, as we go through this Holy Week, God understands disappointment. He wore the t-shirt and the video before any of us were ever near it, and probably will never get that depth of it. But at the end of the week, on that cross, he said some wonderful things. He said to a dying thief, this day you'll be with me in paradise. He said for us, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Gosh, how many times has that been true of me? The mistakes I made when I didn't know what I was doing. I thank my God for a hope that doesn't disappoint.